second page. My name is Steph, and today we're going to be comparing Emma films. So of course the original movie is inspired by the books. We are just going to tie in books and movies and have a great time today. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give this video a like, and I look forward to sharing more bookish content as we go along here. If you are familiar with the story of Emma, you know that this is a story that takes place in Regency era England, written by Jane Austen. We have Emma, who is in a very kind of secluded country home with a small town. Everyone knows everyone else's business. Emma lives with her father. Her older sister has married 7 years ago and has moved out. And Emma starts off with her governess leaving their home and going to be married. So we start off with their wedding day, seeing what happens to Emma once her companion and sort of her best friend slash maternal figure is now not in her immediate vicinity anymore. So we see that she has a way of matchmaking. She befriends a young woman named Harriet, and Harriet Smith has no prospects really for marriage, and she decides she's going to set her up with the most refined young gentleman. I have 3 versions here. We're going to talk about Emma and her matchmaking ways. So here we go. This is the Gwyneth Paltrow version. This was the original version I was familiar with. She leads a fantastic cast of really lovable characters, endearing characters, and it really tells a great version of Emma. I think it's well adapted for the screen. There's a reason that it has lasted the test of time. So this was very well done. Great cast. This is from 2009. This is a BBC version miniseries of Emma. Really goes into a lot of detail, being a miniseries with 4 episodes that are almost an hour each. We really break down all the little nuances of the story and get a lot more detail. Last but not least, we have the most recent, which spent a brief amount of time in a movie theater before COVID shut everything down. So I didn't get to see it in theaters. I really wanted to. We were going to go see it with my book club friends, and unfortunately that just didn't work out before COVID happened. I got to rent it from the library. These are all from the library. I was glad that I could borrow these from the library. Okay, so without further ado, let's compare. As you can see, I've changed my outfit. I just decided, you know what? I have been editing this Emma video and wanting to make like a few tweaks to it. I'm just gonna go through each of the characters in Emma's world and tell you which version was my favorite and why. Alright, starting off with Mr. Woodhouse, Emma's father. My favorite by far is the 2020 version with Bill Nighy. I don't know if I say his name right, but I like him because instead of having this elderly, grandfatherly kind of zoned out Mr. Woodhouse, he is attentive, he's aware, he's alert of what's happening around him when he wants to be. But at least he looks like he's present in the room instead of just like, I don't know, a guy who always sleeps in the corner. Like, he looks like he's involved with the scenes, and I really enjoyed that. Let's go to Miss Taylor. In 2 out of the 3 versions, she's pregnant and getting pregnant, and then at the end of the story, she has a baby. But in the Gwyneth Paltrow version, she's not pregnant ever. So I don't know what that's about. I honestly liked all 3, but I'm gonna say the 90s version. I really enjoyed her kind of companionship a lot. Mr. Weston, my fave would be the 2020 version, our little detective from Sherlock. I thought he did a great job, but honestly I don't have any qualms with the other 2. They're just a little bit older. Mr. Weston from the 2020 at least has a little bit more vivaciousness to him, and he's jovial and I enjoyed him. And then we have Elton. Mr. Elgin. The 2020 version is definitely the most over-the-top version. When I first saw it, I really didn't care for it, but rewatching the movie, I'm like, I can tolerate this. It's okay, but it's not my favorite. So my favorite would be the Alan Cumming rendition of Mr. Elgin in the Gwyneth Paltrow version, because he plays the character, he plays the goofiness and sometimes the snottiness of the character, but he plays it in a more like amiable and approachable way than the other renditions and the other adaptations do. And then Mrs. Elgin. All 3 are quite outrageous. I'd say all 3 of them are pretty good. I kind of forgot the Gwyneth Paltrow version of Mrs. Elgin. I was just like taken aback by her. And I know she's been in other Austen adaptations, but she was so good at bringing something different to the character than I've seen having watched the BBC miniseries and the 2020 versions first. So I liked that she brought something fresh to the role, so I enjoyed that. Jane Fairfax. I really enjoyed the BBC miniseries version because she has a strength to Jane that the other 2 don't. I'm not saying the other 2 are bad. She's supposed to be a character who's kind of disconnected, a little bit mysterious, because she has secrets that no one else knows until the end of the story. But I liked that this Jane stood up for herself when Mr. Elton is coming at her and being like, you're getting old and you're not married, so you should be a governess. Let me hook you up with that right away. And Jane's like, no. And she like stands her ground. She stands up for herself, even when nobody else has got her back, including her secret engagement dude. Yeah, she stands up for herself, and I really like that. So that was something I approve of. Mr. Churchill. So in the BBC version, we see more drawn out tension between Churchill and Emma. We get to see how their relationships build up and builds up her expectations the most, as well as the expectations of the community, and thus risks her reputation the most by acting as flirty as he does and then not following up with a ring. So my favorite would be Ewan McGregor in Gwyneth Paltrow's version. The BBC one was fine, but I really didn't care for the 2020 version. It's not my favorite character, but Ewan McGregor has like a charm and an amiability to it, so even though he's sly and cunning, he at least can be nice some of the time. Whereas like the 2020 guy just seemed very smug and very uppity, and I just didn't, I wasn't convincing to me that he was flirting with Emma. I just felt like Emma was giggling and laughing at him, but it wasn't really warranted for the way he was coming off on screen. So yeah, not my fave, but who can really compare to Ewan McGregor? That's a challenge. Plus, Ewan McGregor sings in that version. I think that's the only version where Churchill sings, if I recall correctly. Let's go on to Miss Bates and Mrs. Bates. I have to say that all three were quite good. Miranda in the 2020 version definitely plays up more of the comedic side, and we don't see her mother too much, but we have little moments. We see a bit more in the earlier two versions of a balance between kindness and foolishness, which Emma complains are too much mixed for her own good. The BBC version and the Gwyneth Paltrow version were a little bit more balanced and entertaining. Not to say that I didn't like Miranda Hart, I thought she was good, but I didn't love her as much as I thought I would in that role. I still think she's fabulous, and I still will always love her and call the midwife as chummy. But I think I would pick either the BBC version or the Gwyneth Paltrow for my favorite Miss Bates. Oh my gosh, I didn't compare Harriet's. Let me do that real quick. I thought they were all well done. The 2021 is a little bit on the more naive, clueless side than the other two are. But if I had to pick a favorite, it would be the Gwyneth Paltrow version of Harriet. She has like the heart and the really sweet, like sincere character, as well as the sometimes clueless and needs some help and guidance from Emma, who of course is kind of misguided herself. So she would be my favorite of the three. Let's see who else. I think that leads us just to Knightley and Emma. Okay, so the Knightleys. Very important character. We have a very charming Mr. Knightley from the Gwyneth Paltrow version. He's fabulous. He does a great job of portraying the character, of guiding her morally and holding her accountable. You definitely see a lot of that in the 2020. The BBC kind of feels more like a reprimand, like slapping a child on the wrist, more so than like lovingly encouraging Emma to do better. I will say he was my least favorite Knightley, not because he was bad, but just because I felt like he didn't, I don't know, the chemistry between the two of them in the BBC version wasn't there for me. Like, I also just didn't like that he's been the leading man in an Austen film already, so to just switch gears and be the lead in another Austen film was like, wait, you belong in Mansfield Park, not in Highbury with Emma. So that threw me off too, but it's all good. That's me, that's not them. Then we have the 2020 version with Johnny what's his name, who did a great job portraying Knightley. I like that he puts a lot of vulnerability into the character, as well as expressive and holding Emma accountable for her actions, which are not so smart at times. I will say this in all three versions, but particularly in the 90s and the 2020 version, we see that Knightley is already established as a friend of Mr. Woodhouse, Emma's father, just as much as he is established in a relationship with Emma at the start of the story. Knightley had a much more vulnerable side, which I liked in the 2020 version, but I also liked when he starts talking about his feelings, even when he gets tongue-tied. We got to see at the moment where he's confessing his heart to Emma, we see him cry, and I thought that was awesome. I just love seeing a Regency guy who could be both strong and be vulnerable and just like lay his heart out on the line for Emma, and I liked that. So I thought that was awesome. So I will say that I think the 2020 Knightley is my favorite, closely followed by the Gwyneth Paltrow version. Last but not least, our Emmas. We have Gwyneth Paltrow, who plays a very well-meaning and kind but foolish matchmaker. And then we have the BBC version where we have a very playful, vibrant, youthful Emma. She bounces around a lot. She's very much, for somebody who's a lady of society, her posture is very playful. Or when she's dancing, she's very exuberant and very enthusiastic. And I like seeing that side because it makes sense. She's a very sheltered woman who has lived a very innocent life up until that point. It makes sense for her character. I bought into it, thought it was very believable, and it was enjoyable to see a totally different rendition. And then the 2020 version, which was quite different, much more on the nasty side of things than I expected in the beginning. She is very uppity, very much on the opposite spectrum completely from the BBC version, where we have this playful, vibrant, lax posture. We see the complete opposite in 2020, where she's very rigid, tall spine, tall back, and very much like the chin's up, and we are just thinking we are fabulous, which, to be fair, in society standards, she is. Anna Taylor-Joy's rendition of Emma took a lot longer for me to warm up to, but eventually had quite a transformation. I did see a lot of development and growth in Emma, partially because she starts off so stoic and so uppity. So, my favorite. It's a tricky thing. I liked all of them truly, but I do really like the Gwyneth Paltrow version. But I really like components that Anna Taylor-Joy and the BBC version brought to the characters because they were all completely different. I enjoyed all their interpretations, truly. The movies as a whole, the music was good in all three of them, but if I had to choose a favorite, the 2020 version would be is my favorite because the music was spectacular. A beautiful combination of a cappella music with beautiful harmonies, and then we have what my subtitles like to call operatic music, which is really just classical sounding music. And we have this beautiful soprano and tenor, and then we have maybe it's a baritone, I forget. And then we have this nice little alto part that adds in, so we have these really beautiful harmonies. The 2020 version, while the other two are beautiful to look at, they're fine, the 2020 version is spectacular to look at. The colors, the way the film is produced, shots, the angles, it just is so aesthetically pleasing to look at. It makes me want to watch it again because it's just beautiful. And I can overlook the things that I don't care for by certain actors or certain characters because it's so beautiful. It just makes it such an experience to watch, and I feel like that makes it a little bit more accessible because even if you aren't totally infatuated with the Emma plot, the idea of Emma's story, or don't care for her in particular, then you can still enjoy the rest of the movie. Rating their dances. All three of them are wonderful. I do have a particular soft spot for the 2020 version because you see a little bit more, you see to the end of their dance, which not all three of them do, and you get to see how they each are caught up in each other. Like at one point, Knightley like forgets to move forward and like somebody almost bumps into him because he's staring at Emma. It's just super sweet and super adorable. And then let's see, 2020's reprimand after Box Hill's fiasco is the strongest and the most convincing. Gwyneth Paltrow starts like crying ferociously with Knightley behind her, but I always felt like she cried like a little bit too much. I didn't feel like the extent of her crying was quite warranted to match how he reprimands her. Cry, yes, but not like sob. So that's my general opinion. And then the BBC reprimand, I don't know. It didn't do much for me. I was just like meh about it. So maybe it suits other people more, that's fine. I'm gonna rank the proposals and then I'm gonna give you my final thoughts and wrap this video up. I love the whole confessing their love for one another in the Gwyneth Paltrow version. I think it's beautiful. I like it a lot. The BBC one was kind of interesting because they're like in the gardens and they're like climbing over hedges to get to one another. I don't know, just something about it kind of disrupted the emotions of the scene for me. Plus, I didn't love that the two didn't have a ton of chemistry together, or at least I didn't feel that way for me personally. So I wasn't like invested and caught up in their romance as much. I'm just like, okay, let's wrap this up. So I confess I did not. That was my least favorite by far of the 3 romance scenes. The 2020 version was one that I enjoyed. I kind of had to watch it twice to kind of like it more than I originally did. I was disappointed. If you've seen it, there's something that interrupts the moment, and I was totally invested in their moment emotionally watching this. And then with this interruption, which is comedic, but it took me out of the moment, and it kind of made me feel like I was deprived of an opportunity to feel more invested in it. You kind of have a scene, and then you have like the second half of the I love you, let's be together scene. Upon rewatching it, I am more okay with it, but initially it really kind of spoiled some of that enjoyment of the conclusion of the story for me. So I will confess it was not my favorite, but rewatching it, I like it a little bit more. So ranking those 3 of confessing the moments, I love 2020 where Knightley cries and he shares his soul in such a heartfelt way, but I do love the Gwyneth Paltrow version. So those 2 are very tightly matched. I think I'm going to lean a little bit more towards the Gwyneth Paltrow version because she doesn't have the you know what. And I'm not going to say it if you haven't seen it because no spoilers. That was supposed to be an X. Last but not least, favorite movie. It is a tough choice. There are good things about all 3 of these movies. Overall, if I'm including music, if I'm including actors and actresses, if I am including the look of the movie, the costumes, the hairstyles, I'm gonna go with the 2020 version for being my favorite. It's the prettiest to watch. I love the music. I could just like have it on in the background, or I could sit down and watch it and thoroughly enjoy it either way. There is nothing wrong with the other 2, but if I had to rank them, my least favorite would be the BBC version. Not because it's bad, but just because overall the feasibility of like sitting down to watch it, it just felt like it took so much longer. We had a lot of scenic shots to kind of stretch things out. I really liked the foundation it got in the beginning that allowed us to get everyone's backstories. I thought that was fabulous. It just took so much longer to feel like it got to the point that I didn't feel like I needed all the extras. There were really only Jane Fairfax being almost forced to be a governess when she had other plans to be secretly engaged, and the beginning that made that one stand out to me. And some of the actors and actresses were phenomenal. And then we had Emma's, I keep saying Emma's version. That doesn't help us when we're comparing Emma's. And then I really like the Gwyneth Paltrow version so much. And then the 2020 version. These were all excellent movies. I'm really glad that I invested the time to watch them. I took a few nights out of my week a couple weeks ago to just sit down and watch like one a day. I saved the BBC one for like a Saturday so I could watch them all sequentially. But yeah, definitely well worth it and definitely enjoyed this. So I really hope that you enjoyed this. I really hope that you enjoyed seeing kind of the comparison of the 3. Would love to hear your thoughts on these characters and your favorites and which adaptation you like the best in the comments below. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day. I forgot to mention that I started filming this video. Well, rather, I filmed this. I was already editing it earlier today. And I realized that there's another version of Emma. Oops. I totally didn't get it, didn't watch it, didn't know it existed. Already filmed the first half of this video, so I'm only going to compare these 3. Apparently there's another BBC one from '96. This is going to have to wait for another video.